20 races, 20 champions. 20 men whose lives were transformed in the ticking of 10 seconds. In the Olympic 100 meters, history has never repeated itself. Each Olympiad has produced a new champion, a new successor to the title, the fastest man on earth. For the lucky ones, the title has brought fame and fulfillment, but others have been less fortunate. Over the next few weeks, we shall be telling the stories of that small band of champions. The film star and the filing clerk, the drug addict and the convicted thief, the national hero and the man who was driven to a wretched suicide. This year in Seoul, South Korea, the title comes of age. The fastest man on earth will take his place among history's finest athletes. He will also inherit a strange and bewildering legacy. The search for the fastest man reaches back 5,000 years before Christ, to the religious festivals of Syria, where pottery drawings reveal evidence of the first organized foot races. The culture spread through the Middle East and Mediterranean countries to Greece, where the passion for athletic competition gave birth to games which were held on the sacred site of Olympia. Those ancient games yielded their heroes, sprinters who raced the length of a stadium for the reward of a branch of wild olive and the lavish hospitality of their kinsmen. For more than 1,000 years, through 320 celebrations, the games grew and prospered, but slowly the glory departed, and in 394, by decree of the Roman Emperor Theodosius, the games of Olympia were terminated. The stadium lay in ruins. The desire to sprint and compete remained a basic impulse, and a few nations kept faith with the traditions of the foot race. But the Olympics had passed into myth and legend, and it was not until the late 18th century that sprinting again seized the popular imagination. New heroes emerged from a strictly professional sport, most notably the Reverend Lord Frederick Beauclerk, who was said to be the great-grandson of King Charles II and Nell Gwyn. The sprinting craze spread through the new industrial cities of the 19th century. At Powder Hall in Edinburgh and at Lillie Bridge in West London, stadiums were built to accommodate the huge crowds. The great attraction was a Londoner named Harry Hutchins, one of the pioneers of modern sprinting, who earned vast sums of money by his blazing speed. Ironically, Hutchins played a leading role in the event which was to destroy the professional sport. In September 1887, he was matched against a young Geordie named Harry Gent in front of a 25,000 crowd at Lillie Bridge.
Unfortunately, neither of their two contending supporters, the bookies who supported them, could agree about who was going to win. It was clear that there was no agreement, and after having a little warm-up in front of the crowd, the two men were spirited away from the stadium, and the crowd were left to fume and rage behind them.
Victorian England was scandalized by the scenes which followed. The angry mob smashed the stadium to the ground, overpowering the police and setting fire to the handsome wooden stands. With the destruction of Lillie Bridge, professional athletics was utterly discredited. There was a vague hankering for the noble, mystical ideal of sport for sport's sake, nurtured by the English universities. Before the century was through, a young French aristocrat, Baron Pierre de Coubertin, translated that ideal into vivid reality.
Well, de Coubertin's idea was as an odd hybrid, an odd mix of ideas. He came over to England and went to rugby and Harrow and Eton and saw how, as far as he was concerned, the empire had been created on the basis of school sport. So there was this odd mix of a rosy view of Greek athletics, which had been mainly professional, and Tom Brown's school days, and this odd mixture became the modern Olympic movement.
When de Coubertin first invited the nations of the world to meet in Olympic competition, the response was unspectacular. 13 nations sent a total of 311 athletes, most of them paying their own expenses, to Athens in the early spring of 1896. The American team arrived late at the magnificently reconstructed Pan-Athenian Stadium. Indeed, they were only just in time to hear King George I of Greece declare open the first games of the modern era. Among that United States team of 14 athletes was a young Bostonian named Tom Burke, who was to win his favorite event, the 400 meters. He entered the short sprint as an afterthought, and with his American colleagues, shocked the rest of the field by adopting the new crouch start. At first, the Greeks were baffled. Then they became intrigued. When the final arrived, there were 40,000 people in the stadium and a further 60,000 peering down from the surrounding hills. The young law student rose to the occasion, driving into an early lead, then easing across the rough cinders to break the tape. The first Olympic 100 meters champion. Like all the winners, Burke's prize was a laurel crown and a silver medal. Gold medals were still some 12 years away. Modest in scale, but rich in enthusiasm, the Athens Olympics had proved the success of de Coubertin's dreams. And Tom Burke had helped to make them so. He returned home to a wild Boston welcome. But for Tom Burke, fame was merely a passing phase. He settled into a successful law practice, dabbled in journalism, and died in relative obscurity at the age of 54. In its obituary, the Boston Post described Burke as one of the greatest athletes of all time. The author of that article was Arthur Duffy, the man who seemed certain to succeed to Burke's title at the Paris Games of 1900.